Happy New Year! How is that resolution list working out so far? There's one thing you can do for yourself that's easy and enjoyable. Pick up a book to support your career or prepare for your retirement. Check out Smart Teacher, Teacher Career and Retirement Planning, and Retirement, that's MINT, Fresh Starts and New Beginnings. Both are found on Amazon. Now on with the show.
I think I had a bit of an urgency addiction in schools, like lots of education. It's busy, it's energetic, I've got lots of stuff to do, and I think I got addicted to that dopamine rush with all the energy and trying to get through my to-do list as quickly as I can.
That self-described urgency addiction is surprisingly one of the things Kevin misses after a successful 35-year career in BC's public education system. It's what he says he's replacing that with in retirement that will surprise you even more. He shares this and much more in today's episode.
Welcome to 85 After School. I'm your host, Nicole, and this is the podcast about teacher career and retirement planning through real-life stories of those who live it.
So it's my great pleasure to welcome Kevin, my next guest. So welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really delighted to be here and to have the opportunity to chat with you. So I appreciate the invitation.
And you're coming from beautiful British Columbia. I'm wondering, when we are thinking about our careers as an educator, a teacher, how did you even find your pathway to teaching?
It's a really good question. And I would say the pathway was somewhat meandering. I was a pretty good high school basketball player. I wanted to play college basketball. I did the academic thing I wasn't as interested in. I had an amazing high school girlfriend who became my amazing university girlfriend and then my amazing wife. And she came from a family of teachers. And so she was really clear. She was on a pathway. She graduated as an elementary school teacher at 21.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I liked working with kids. I thought, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Whatever. So I'm embarrassed to say, as much as I've gotten out of education and loved every stage of my career, it wasn't something that I was really passionate about. I think the passion came once I was in it. So, and even then, the first 3 years, I don't know that I necessarily was in the best place for me. And one thing that I would say to your listeners who are earlier in their career, I'd really recommend trying a number of different schools and different positions. I started off as a secondary teacher. I enjoyed it, but I always didn't feel like it was the right fit for me. Ended up in middle school. That felt more comfortable for me. Ended up sort of my career as an elementary school principal. It took me like 15 or 20 years to go, oh, this is probably where I should have started.
I love your candidness, because often we hear teachers, especially when they spend 30 plus years in the education system, that, they were putting their dolls on chairs and instructing them when they were poor. But it's nice and refreshing to hear that you kind of fell into it. Is that a fair statement?
For sure. And even the first few years, I think I was just that, young man sort of arrogance. I think that, I think I should be doing more with my life or something along those lines. And so after 3 years, my wife and I were newly married. My dad had a business interest in Whistler, BC, but things had soured between him and his business partner. So we took a leave of absence from teaching for a year. And I thought, go up there, help my dad get his business off the ground. I thought, well, maybe this is what I'm going to do, right? What was eye-opening for me very early in the process is that once the business was up and running, I knew what every day for the next 40 years was going to look like. And I don't mean, I might full head off to the challenges and the stress and pressures of people who work in the business field. But for me, it wasn't purposeful. And I missed teaching. And I came back to it with a really renewed, fresher, passionate perspective about what I wanted to do. And it was clear to me that year taught me I want to be able to make a meaningful difference. And so I was able, and I landed in a little better place. When I came back, I was placed in a junior secondary school, a little smaller school. And I felt, okay, this is really where I should be and where I want to be.
Kevin, these are such advantages for teachers across Canada, because most of them do let you take a leave of absence, able to explore other areas. And for you to recognize that you missed it and coming back to it, what a rewarding confirmation that you are actually in the right place and that your calling is teaching, even if it wasn't conscious when you first started.
Yeah.
So how did your career path unfold? You came back to a smaller junior high school. What kinds of subjects did you teach? How did you evolve?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I started off, I sort of as a youngish sort of former athlete. So I taught a lot of phys ed, some social studies at the time. We had career and personal planning. I did a little bit of learning support as well. And during that time, I would say I was just looking for opportunities where I could really broaden my influence. Coached a lot, worked with extracurriculars a lot of time after school. At that point, we did have a young family. And my wife was teaching part-time. So I think, I kind of immersed myself in that sort of middle school, junior school life. And I think became, a reasonably good teacher in that area. But I was always, I guess, wondering about what was next for me. What was the career path going to look like? And so I'd really been influenced by some really strong school leaders, people whom I really admired, who I hope saw something in me and encouraged me to apply. But also, I was living in Vancouver at the time. And Vancouver, as most big Canadian cities, not terribly affordable place. And so I was looking outside for a vice principalship. I'm looking outside the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. And just coincidentally, as I was looking, there was posting for a vice principalship in the Comox Valley School District. My wife's family had a cabin on Hornby Island since she was a kid, which is close to where we live. So she knew the community a little bit. And I applied for the position. It was my first vice principalship I applied for. I did not expect to get it. I thought this will be a learning experience. I interviewed on a Friday. Sunday, the superintendent called me and offered me the job. And I said, I need 24 hours to think about it.
They wanted you to start on Monday?
Well, the August. I said I was really not expecting this phone call, and so I'm good friends with the superintendent since retired, who still teases me about the fact that I asked for 24 hours before I said yes. But and then it was a new community, new opportunity, brand new school district. I would recommend to people earlier in their career, move school districts. It's move schools as often as you can. It is amazing professional learning. It's not comfortable for the first little while, but you will learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about different systems when you have the opportunity to move schools or move school districts.
It's also eye-opening, isn't it, Kevin? Because you're a provincial curriculum, but each district interprets how to deliver that curriculum. They write their own policies, and how you're used to do things in a certain place is not how it's done in another district.
Absolutely. And so, fast forwarding from that, I spent 17 years in the school district as a vice principal, largely at the middle school level, and then principal at the elementary school level. Absolute fish out of water. I never worked a day in an elementary school, and something I found myself as an elementary principal, as always leaning on my wife, who was an experienced primary teacher who coached me through the first couple of years of how to be a reasonably effective elementary principal. I would come home and say, hey, I've got this idea, honey. What do you think? She said, don't do that.
Suicide.
Exactly. Don't tell anybody you were thinking about doing that. Okay, got it. Thank you. But I had always been involved in my provincial association, which is the BC Principals and Vice Principals Association. For me, it was about, I had difficulty saying no. I look at lots of other opportunities and think, oh, that'd be really cool to try that. So I ran for the presidency of the association, which was a 2-year term. So we moved back to Vancouver for 2 years. Our kids were out of the house. At that point, the timing was good for us. And after my 2-year team was over, a staff position came up, and I spent the last 5 years of my career before retirement working as the executive director of the association. And so getting to your point about the difference in school districts, I would say the difference in schools is amazing. 2 schools right next door to each other can be in vastly different places. So I'm so grateful really in those 7 years to have a very privileged 30,000 foot view of how the system works. 60 school districts in our province. I made it to, I think, 58 of them. Visited hundreds of schools and talked with thousands of teachers in schools and hundreds of principals and vice principals, just trying to better understand the context of the work and how we as an association support their leadership development. And really, it was just such a wonderful opportunity.
I love how you frame that, Kevin. It's a privilege. You almost sound like your career, while methodical in the sense of I like to try different things, it was very much a project. And then what a privilege, as you say, to be able to see that bird's eye view of what the province is like. And congratulations, because how long were you in its entirety in the system?
About 35 years. 35
years. That's amazing. Yeah. And so in that 35 years, there must be so many memorable stories that you've shared, obviously, along the way. But is there one in particular you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, for me, I think there's a little bit difference between memorable and impactful. I think, as I mentioned, the opportunity to travel around the province and meet school leaders where they work, it was really important from my personal perspective and the association's perspective to breathe the air of school leaders, really understand that you can't really understand the context of their situation until you're in their school, walking around them, talking about what they lead. I will say, and the most memorable thing for me, this is going to sound a little strange, but it's about understanding your impact when you work in a school, because I don't think it's always felt in a way that I think we would like it to be felt. But I'm sorry, I set the context. It's going to sound a little weird. My second last principalship was in an elementary school. The middle school was a kilometer away. My superintendent had done sort of a mid-year shuffle. So I was moving from the elementary school. I'd been there for 4 years. It was a challenging place, but I was really proud of the work that we did and really the best staff that worked for it. But after spring break, I was moving to the middle school to be a principal. So Friday before spring break was my last Friday at the elementary school. And on Monday, following spring break, I was going to be at this middle school. And so I'm a bit of an introvert. And I went to my vice principal, Tracy, and I said, I really don't want anything. Like, I don't want a big fuss made. And, she told me something I've heard many times in my life, which was, it's not always about you, Kevin. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that. And so I got so it was the Friday afternoon. I sort of knew what was happening. There was a lot of shuffle and energy in the school. I got called to the courtyard with maybe 45 minutes left in the school day. And it was the last day before spring break. And so there's the entire school, parents, staff, kids, all lined up. And so they walked me to my next job. So we walked through the community to my next job. And it was just a lovely opportunity for me to say goodbye and thank you to that entire school community. So a different time for sure. This parade through our neighborhood with signs and balloons, and it was really lovely. And I just started at the head of this parade of probably 500 plus kids and parents and teachers, and made my way to the back. And I just thought, I want to hug every kid in the school who wants a hug. And so I made my way to the back. They sort of led me to the steps of my new school, and lots of thank yous and cheering. And then I went back to school, and I stayed there and met with a new principal and walked around the school.
How did you hold it together, Kevin?
I didn't really. Yeah, it was really hard. And so, and you mentioned, from my sort of placeholder in Zoom. So I'm a superhero nerd. I love superhero stuff. I think I'm Mr. Incredible for the Incredibles movie. I would wear that superhero costume any chance I could. And so knowing this was coming, I dressed full Mr. Incredible costume as I walked with the kids. So funny thing, which I hadn't thought was, I'm in this full costume. I'm saying goodbye to kids. I'm waving, all that sort of stuff. They love the fact that I'm wearing costume. I'm still in costume, but I haven't left my car there. I didn't think this thing through. So all the kids go home. I kind of sit in the principal's office in this costume, talking to him about what should I expect after spring break. We've met several times before. But then I have to walk back to my old school because that's where my car is, and I have to finish packing, and it's sunny afternoon. I'm walking through the neighborhood in this ridiculous costume as I try to make my way back to the school. But getting back to your point, it was hard to hold it together. I got very teary during the whole thing. And so it's a thing I think that I cherish the most in terms of memories, because I got something that I think is very rare. I got an opportunity to really feel and experience that, the work that I did had made a difference. And it was just, initially I was really reluctant for this, but now I'm so glad that I said yes to it, because it is one of the most memorable parts of my entire career.
It's remarkable. What a strong community. And Kevin, it makes you really understand when people say sometimes it's not about you, meaning we want to honor you so much that parents and children and teachers plan this behind your back.
So many years later, I still get a little teary thinking about it. So I think, it'll be one of the things I reflect on well into my retirement.
And those kids too. I think that's one thing that they're going to definitely remember, is that they got to do this parade for you walking to the next school.
Yeah, I think it was good closure for both of us, rather than me just sort of disappearing or, having some sort of an assembly send off or something, like, particularly for the younger ones, which, a number of parents had come up to me and said, my kindergarten, my grade 1 child's really going to miss you. This is going to be hard, which was really touching. But I think what the thing about it was they got to see where I was going. Like, it was some closure for them. Mr. Reimer's not just kind of disappearing. Oh, he's going to be over there. And we'll walk by the school. Maybe we'll still see him. So I think it was good for them and good for me as well to know that, I wasn't going too far away.
That's amazing. What a celebration to 35 years in your career. There came a time, though, where you decided, time for me to go. You were, if I understood correctly, you were working in the Federation office at the time, and you decided, I have a 35-year career and I'm ready to step into a new chapter. Yeah,
so and one thing we haven't talked about, I did have some health issues. And so, a mild heart attack I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary. And so, I was fortunate enough that I was dealt with appropriately in time. No damage to my heart. I didn't need to stand anything along those lines. So it was a great wake-up call. And then suffered with a bout of long COVID. So, it's not, my career didn't end the way necessarily that I wanted it to, but my body was telling me it's probably time to take a break. And I had enough years. My pension was in a good position, those sorts of things. So I'm fortunate enough that I had 35 amazing years. The last couple of them were a little tricky when it came to my health, but my body was telling me I need to do something differently. The retirement has given me an opportunity to really focus on my health, still do some work, but I pick and choose what I want to do and work as little or as much as I would like to. And that's really the gift of retirement and the system that we work in that allows us those opportunities to pursue, like yourself, projects of passion that you and want to continue to make some sort of a contribution to a system that's really given, I feel very grateful. It's given a lot to me.
So many of us work diligently and so focused 24/7 on the students we work with in the school system that sometimes we do actually put ourselves second or third place. And that involves, like you said, it was a wake-up call for you to take care of you. And I'm glad that, you're good and you're taking care of yourself and it's actually benefiting you. And I know that you have lots of passions in this retirement. And I want to talk about your book, because you wrote this fabulous book.
Oh, thank you.
And maybe you can share the title and where our audience can find it.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon Canada or Amazon States, actually all Amazon. So it's called A Year of Leading, a 40-week leadership compass for principals and vice principals. Again, the gift of retirement is having some time to really reflect on my career and put something out that I thought was of value, particularly for school leaders. I should add, part of the retirement has been able to pursue some academic passions. And one of those things for me was coaching. And so I completed my organizational coaching certification. I have my ICF certification that I finished off in retirement. But what I'd heard, the provincial perspective, what I discovered in part was starting a mentoring program with the BC Principals and Vice Principals Association that early career, mid-career, late career educators, whether they're teachers or school leaders, are really feeling more of a need now for mentorship. When we started the mentoring program, I thought it would be a lot of people in the first couple of years of their career who were looking for mentors, and it wasn't. It was everyone who was looking for some kind of mentoring support. And so what I try to do within the book is, and I describe it sometimes as a mentor in print. And so it's 40 leadership lessons. It's sort of, I try to, all the chapters are the same. It's really kind of took my coaching background and my mentoring experience and tried to develop that into the 40 different leadership traits. It doesn't necessarily follow the rhythm of a 40-week school year, but the intent was that you could read a chapter in 10 or 15 minutes and perhaps focus on or assess yourself around that leadership trait during the course of that week. Pick the book up, dip into it whenever you feel like there's something that you would like to sharpen the saw when it comes to a particular leadership trait.
What I really like about it, because I've read the book and I recommend it to everyone, because it is a perspective on all those interpersonal skills. And in order to be able to build that trust in a school, you talk about transparency in decision making. And I like what you said about displaying the cracks, because new principals want to seem like they're perfect. Maybe you can elaborate on what you mean by displaying the cracks.
Yeah, so each chapter is based on a metaphor, and that really came from my coaching experience. What it taught us, and when you're coaching someone and they offer a metaphor, it's usually a really great way to unpack their thinking around that and reframe thinking. And so what we often hear, I think, in my coaching experience is, we hear metaphors in schools all the time. One of them in particular is, I feel like my head is barely above the waterline. And so as a coach, I'd want to know, well, how long have you felt that way? Why is this happening? How close are you to the shore? Have you been in this kind of situation before? And so each chapter is based on a metaphor. But I'm hoping that we're in a better place where school leaders and anyone who works in the system understands that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. And sharing that openly, as you said, really serves to strengthen that relational piece, particularly for school leaders, right? You're seen as being more human. I think that school leaders often feel that they have to be perfect. They have to give the appearance that they're being strong and stoic. And I hope that, with the focus on resiliency and well-being, those chapters give school leaders permission to be a little bit more vulnerable. I use the analogy of the kintsugi Japanese pottery, where the pottery is broken, whether intentionally or not, and the cracks are filled with gold. And I use that to set up this metaphor about what vulnerable will be like. And the pottery is actually stronger and more beautiful because it's cracked and it's flawed, and those flaws have been filled in. And I'm trying to make the argument for school leaders that humility and vulnerability are strengths, and we need to make sure that we focus those and we share those things with our staff in terms of just really contextualizing the work that we're doing, understanding it's this job that we do at any level in schools is almost entirely about human connection.
I like the way that you have these metaphors throughout the book. I also particularly picked up on the part where you discuss about conflict and your own personal bias. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that as well? The hidden weaknesses, or if you have small tensions or conflicts, how you should nip them in the bud.
Yeah, I think there is some of the best things I've been involved in my career have come from some tension. And I think that sometimes we have a tendency to avoid or want to fix tension rather than explore that tension and see how that tension could be leveraged in a way for us to better understand each other or also support the programs that we're doing. And so, sometimes I think school leaders think, I've got to keep everything calm and even keel the whole time. I have to present in that way. And so I do open the book with a recognize of my own perspective, right? I'm a white male in my 60s. And this is my perspective. And if at any point in the book that I have marginalized any other perspectives, I apologize in advance for that. And please reach out to me to help me broaden my understanding. But yeah, I think recognizing the perspective and trying to recognize the perspective of the other people that we work is an important part of what we do in the coaching. But getting back to your point about the trust, I do think it is all part of a high trust relationship. Mm-hmm. So I do teach coaching skills to principals and vice principals, but what I'd like to say really clearly at the outset is that when we're building relationships and we want to strengthen the connection in a high trust relationship, people like to be asked questions. We're trying to figure out who we are in this conversation. In a low trust relationship, people don't like to be questioned. They're almost identical processes, but the difference is how is that person responding based on the level of trust within our relationship.
That is so key. It's true. And you see how people react even physically when they're in a low trust relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
They're being questioned. Why? You don't trust me? You don't understand my professionalism? So there's always that pushback.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kevin, your wealth of knowledge, and I love this book, and I'm going to remind everyone, it's called A Year of Leading, and it's available on Amazon, and I highly recommend it. We'll put it in the show notes as well with a link. With all your wisdom and knowledge, you must have something that you miss about teaching. Is there anything?
So many things. So I have a teacher candidate that I still work with. I still coach principals and vice principals. So I get into schools. I miss the energy and the buzz that comes with a school. I think I had a bit of an urgency addiction in schools, like lots of educators. It's busy, it's energetic. I've got lots of stuff to do. And I think I got addicted to that dopamine rush of all the energy and trying to get through my to-do list as quickly as I can. So I miss the energy and the buzz. And it's something I share with principals and vice principals. And the other piece is, particularly in elementary school, you've got a kid in your school who is just beginning to learn to read. And, and they're working in this way, they're developing this new amazing skill. And the first thing they want to do is share it with you. And they want to come to your office and read to you. And I think, oh my gosh, there's really nothing better than that. I would often tease parents in assembly. And I in a good high trust relationship with the parents that I work with, I tell them, you got to see something very special tonight. I get to see this stuff every day. And that's why my job as a principal is so much better than your job.
Yeah.
Most people laughed, some people didn't.
Yeah.
But I miss, there's so many things that I think really it's the energy and the relationships that I miss, but I do get a chance to be in school.
Yeah. It is a community, right? On the other hand, what was the most unexpected thing once you retired?
A really great question. I think I underestimated how long it would take to really kind of decompress. I think it took us really a full year not to sort of understand what retirement looked like. I mean, I think we were pretty clear about what we wanted to do in retirement, but just really, getting back to the urgency addiction. I felt that first year was my 12-step program to deal with my urgency addiction. Oh, I can sit down in the afternoon and I can read a book.
And not feel guilty, right, Kevin?
And not feel guilty about it, right? Yeah. And remembering, I worked for 35 years for this.
Yeah.
So for this opportunity, not for this specifically, but this is the reward that comes at the end of a lengthy career. And so, coming to terms with that and trying to figure out what the day-to-day looked like really took, I would say, the better part of the year to a place where we're somewhat comfortable with what this next chapter of our lives looks like.
I was surprised with that as well, Kevin, because I thought, I have all these projects that I want to do. And then, I find myself at Costco at 11:30 on a Wednesday and I'm like, this isn't right. This is so wrong. I'm wondering, what advice would you have for beginning, middle, and late career teachers in relation to their own career planning?
Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning. So, I had a meandering start to my school year. So, for many teachers, I would say, experience as much of the system as you can. Switch school, take on new course loads, try new role, coach, work with groups, stretch your boundaries, really get a sense of what it is that you want to do, and try to position yourself so with a better understanding of it. This is where I really want to have the most influence in my career. I watch my daughter, who's a new teacher right now, doing her master's degree. I would say, get your master's degree done as quickly in your career. It makes a lot of financial sense to do so, but it also opens up the doors for other opportunities. So try to do that as quickly as you can. For people in the mid-career, this is, I think, really one of the sweet spots in the career. I think it probably takes about 10 years to figure out what the job is and experience enough things in school life to really understand and appreciate how schools work. And I think this is really kind of the investment decade. I think this is time to hone the craft. I worked with a teacher who described it this way. She said, teaching is my job, getting better at it is my profession. And I thought, yes, for people late in their career, and I think what really emphasized this was a book by Arthur Brooks called Strength to Strength, where his recommendation is your last stage of career should be almost entirely about mentoring. It's a frustration for me in our system that people absolutely move on to retirement as they should. They worked hard for it, but they take this lifetime's worth of experience with them. And there are not enough opportunities for people to continue to mentor and nurture that next generation of educators. And so I think you should be trying to do that in your last 10 years of your career, and just take those new people aside and make a point of really instilling all of it, that career's worth of learning, helping the next generation. So those are sort of the three things I would recommend.
But what a great nonprofit that would be to match mentors in that stage. That's amazing. Definitely great advice. And I hope the listeners are picking up on what you're saying is learn, learn, learn. Try everything. Stretch your wings. Don't close the door and teach, grade 1 30 times. Kevin, a question for you. If you could go back to when you first started teaching, what you know now about retirement, is there anything you would have done differently in preparation?
Yeah, I think I probably would have talked to more retirees, as getting closer about seeking advice from them. Like, what were some things that were unexpected for you? What would you have done a little bit differently? I knew retirement was coming. Was I as purposeful about what the next phase was going to be? Maybe not as much as I should have been. I knew there were things that I wanted to do, checklist. I was a three-chord guitar player for most of my life, so I started taking guitar lessons from a young woman in town who's a brilliant musician, so I've learned a lot along the way. I had a book in me that I wanted to write and travel and all those sorts of things. But those are the big picture things that you do. So what are the small moments like? And those are the things I think that took me that first year to figure out what those small moments look like, and the comfortableness around this, and how do I, make sure that my day is productive, but I'm focused on myself, and I'm focused on my family, and focused on my health. And so those are the quiet moments that I don't think people really prepare you for when you're working on those bigger things, those projects that you always wanted to get to. But there's lots of really quiet moments in between those things. And so how do you become more comfortable with those quiet moments?
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think it's a unique journey for every individual, but because we're so, like you said, adrenaline or urgency addiction, we're not used to having time for ourselves and being able to sit. And that seems to be the biggest psychological difference between being in the thick of it and then having time for yourself, right? So it's great advice. And on a high level, is there anything you would have advice for our listeners in relation to financial planning?
I think, first off, I would say most of us in the country work in an amazing pension plan. So if you have, depending on the number of years you have in it, I feel blessed. My friends who are doctors and lawyers would really love to have the pension plan that teachers do. So we're fortunate enough that there is some financial stability. I think what worked for my wife and I is that we've had the same financial planner for more than 30 years. And so he has understood our needs along the way, investing early, but staying with the same sort of financial advisor who understands the context of your work and what your long-term goals are. And again, getting back to that, the importance of a trusting relationship, that was really helpful for us.
Yeah, it goes back to your book in the sense of building trustworthy relationships in that regard as well. Kevin, we've reached the part of the show where I ask my guests to contribute a gem, that one nugget or piece of advice that will resonate with our listeners.
Yeah, for me, I think, and particularly for those people who are listening who may be a little earlier in their career, I think retirement has given me the perspective that my career was very important to me, as it is with most of your listeners. But I think the distance that retirement gives, understand it's just one chapter. And so I think the people whom I really, have learned a lot have done three things that I think I really admire in terms of their prioritize. They prioritize their relationships. They prioritize their curiosity. They're curious about the world and what they can learn and how they can continue to learn new skills or enhance skills, and prioritize their health. And so I think, those three things I think are important really for a successful, healthy retirement, whatever that phase is. So I think those are the three things that I would say.
A true gem, because you're taking care of your mental health, and then you're taking care of your physical health by being active, and you're building on your relationships. So a true gem indeed, Kevin. It's been such a pleasure. I want to remind the listeners that you have this wonderful book, A Year of Leading, which is available on Amazon. And I really enjoy reading it, so I recommend it to all the listeners. It's been amazing talking to you. I've enjoyed your stories, and know that you've had such a wonderful 35-year career in education. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you know when new episodes are uploaded. We'd also love to hear your feedback. Leave a review or connect with us on Instagram or Facebook at 85 After School. Hey, if you're interested in being a guest, be sure to email us directly, 85afterschool@gmail.com. That's 85afterschool@gmail.com. Until the next episode, be good to yourself.